Hello and welcome to another installment of Faces of JAF. Please welcome Julia Connor, a pediatric social worker at UVM Children's Hospital in Vermont. Welcome, Julia.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. What motivated you to become a pediatric social worker?
Well, when I finished my master's in social work, I was working in adoption for many years and then ended up moving towards the medical social work route and have always loved working with kids and families and found myself in the hospital setting and have been working with our pediatric hematology and oncology team for just over 2 years. I love being in this role and working with patients and families and getting to build those relationships and really getting to know our family as well.
You work in the hematology oncology unit. What motivates you with the patient families? I know there can be some challenging times with them, but what do you feel can drive you through those challenging points?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like sometimes when I tell people what my job is, the immediate reaction is, that must be so depressing and so sad, and that must be so hard. And it is certainly all of those things at different times. I would say most days are really, filled with challenges, but also filled with a lot of joy, and always amazed by the resilience of the kids that we work with. I mean, I work with kids from age 2 to 20. And so all along that spectrum, we serve kids and families. And, I find it really enjoyable and rewarding. And, the kids are wonderful. They're resilient, they're funny, and their families are going through a really challenging time. And so just to be kind of a person who's there to both listen and sort of take on some of the burden, if I can, of the challenges is really the goal for me in my role.
Well, thank you for doing that because as a former caregiver, I know how important it is to have that, treatment team, and you really are a part of that, right? So when a new pediatric patient comes into your unit, are they assigned a social worker right at their first visit? How do you get partnered with or paired with the patients?
If a child comes in and gets diagnosed with any type of cancer, they're kind of stuck with me throughout. And what's great about it is I get to follow families both on our inpatient floor and in our outpatient clinic. So it's a consistency that I think is helpful. And I've had families say, it's really helpful each time we need help with something to not have to sort of start at the beginning with somebody new. We can just sort of pick up where we left off and go from there. So I really get to see families from the point of diagnosis all the way through until the end of treatment. One of the things I think that has really impacted me a lot is being a part of those initial conversations when a child is diagnosed. We have a great team of medical providers, and they often bring me in for those initial conversations. And oftentimes I'm just sort of a quiet observer during those times, but it's really humbling to see how families receive that information, and then, sort of the reaction of where do we go from here and what do we do. So I'm lucky to have a team that really includes me in all of those conversations, and I feel lucky to be kind of the person my families get stuck with no matter what.
I don't think, that they get stuck with. I think that they are probably relieved to have that smile. That's amazing that that's what UVM can do for the Children's Hospital, bring you in, and that the medical team does that, because I think that's so important for you to see that initial reaction, because I'm sure for you and what you're doing on the clinical side is then you can almost create a little bit of a plan of how to engage with them on the next couple visits, and because you have that background. I can appreciate that probably helps you advocate as well for the family with the medical team if they are having, a trouble with treatment or a financial barrier, something comes up, you're a part of that. And that's just, the goal. I think I say this is, I am a firm believer that social work and patient advocacy should be a part of the treatment plan, because it is such a big part. And those barriers, unfortunately, do come up for the greater percent of our population, right, of the oncology community. So you work with our program manager, Shannon Glanty, and that you actually are a new social worker to JAF in 2020. We received a wonderful gift from One Mission Foundation, and we're able to set up a pediatric financial assistance fund. And when Shannon was doing her research, she found that UVM had a pediatric facility that we weren't working with. And our overall goal is to really support all New England cancer facilities. How has JAF helped you work with your families? And what is the importance of the work that we are doing in collaboration with the work that you're doing with the families?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a long list of organizations that at different times have offered financial assistance to our families. And we do have some local organizations here in Vermont that help. But really what that looks like is, they might send a gas card or donate, some ferry passes. When I connected with Shannon, which was sort of right before COVID kind of hit, I feel like the stars were aligned, because little did I know it was going to be just a storm of needs that were coming. And to have JAF as a partner organization has been huge. To be able to meet with families and say, bring me copies of your bills, email them to me, and we'll take care of, a whole chunk of them through this organization. I can't really show you the relief that I see in people's faces, but there is still some stigma around talking about some of those challenges that come with a cancer diagnosis. When you have a child who's diagnosed with cancer, you don't want to be talking about those things in front of them necessarily, and you don't want them to feel that somehow whatever's happening to them is responsible for hardship in their family. To be able to tell families, just send me your bills, and that we can do this through JAF has been a real lifesaver. And I have to say, in the time, during this pandemic, we've seen more needs than ever, and the support that they feel and the gratitude that they have towards JAF is huge. Even to be able to take care of a month's worth of bills is a really big relief for a lot of our families.
Julia, if you were to look at the adult oncology community and then the pediatric oncology community, do you feel that the pediatric patients, that there are financial barriers that they face different than the adult community?
My colleagues here at University of Vermont Medical Center who work with our adult oncology patients do a wonderful job in sort of wrapping around our adult patients. And I do find that our kids, depending on the diagnosis, they might spend a month inpatient at the time of diagnosis. Then when they go home, they may be back the next week with a fever, and they may be in the hospital again for weeks. And so that sort of unknown, and when a child is inpatient and requires a parent to be here with them, the burden that puts on families is huge. And, of course, when a parent isn't the patient, they may be able to do some work from home. But overall, what I found is that families really end up drastically decreasing their income. Either one parent decides to either stop working or work much less in order to be the primary person who's bringing their child to appointments. You think about a young child, if they're unable to go to school and have to be home, they need somebody there with them. In some ways, I think that we're lucky to live in Vermont. We do have tight-knit, close communities who tend to rally around each other and really support these families as best we can. And we also are working with a lot of rural poverty and a lot of barriers for families in terms of accessing care. And so to have the financial assistance from JAF has been a real gift for many of our families.
Being in a pandemic and having that experience, even more so what I'm hearing from healthcare professionals is that, dependent if you're the patient or the caregiver, you don't want to go into work because you're coming home then to immunocompromised loved one that you're putting at risk during a pandemic. And that's a really challenging thing for a lot of families to even, wrap their arms around. So they do have to think about resigning or being laid off. And those are really tough decisions for a family. So, my heart goes out to anybody that has to make those decisions. Again, I thank you for being there and helping them make the decision or guiding them. And they're not alone.
Our families are incredibly resilient and resourceful, and I don't know, I would imagine it's not a Vermont thing, but I would say that a lot of our families don't ask for help if they don't truly need it. And so the practice of knowing the resources there and being able to offer it without waiting for somebody to ask for the help has been a really important lesson for me. And, I really am grateful to have had those early conversations with Shannon about how easy it is to sort of help families access this support, because a lot of my families, I know they're struggling and they might not ask for help. So being able to say, hey, I'm going to offer you this. I know you haven't asked for it. You don't have to make a decision today, but I'm going to keep bringing it up until you decide to take me up on it. And so that's been a huge benefit and a real relief for a lot of the families that we work with.
And we're so blessed to have our organization be able to support you. This is collaborative, right? We can help you and you help educate us about what your families are going through, because you are on the front line. We're here helping you, but you can tell us what those families are in need and what if and when that changes, because it will. We're all pivoting every day, and it's an evolving world out there. But thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for being what I say social workers are angels walking on earth. But really, honestly, you're a godsend, and you're not a pain to your patients. You're a beautiful smile, and you allow people to put their shoulders down and take a deep breath. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Jen, for having me and for all the support that you've given us.
We look forward to the many years ahead supporting you.